Nice to have you back.
Where are we?
We were both double-crossed by Luna. I do not know why she did it, but I saw a video of you undergoing some tests. They were extracting something from you.
That's weird. I've got a major headache, but other than that, I feel okay.
Well, if we are going to get to the bottom of this, the first thing we need to do is get out of here and find Luna.
That's okay, Clank. I'll handle this one.
I think you got him, Ratchet.
I'm just getting started.
Hey, I know I've complained about the story a lot, but still I have to point... There's my cat in my microphone. I know I've complained about the story a lot, but I have to complain about something again. How did Clank get in here without running into any of the security bots? How did he get past this locked door? Now, I know nothing is perfect, okay? I know every narrative has its flaws, but this is really, really basic stuff here. Like, thinking, how did this character get into this room? That's really just simple. I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm having such a hard time understanding how the writers or writer wrote it this way, to where nothing seems to make any sense, and the plot has horrible pacing, and there's so little cohesion in the way the characters behave. And anyway, this level's alright. It's pretty standard as far as Ratchet and Clank levels go, but I think it has some entertaining diversions and things worth remembering, such as some actually nice turret segments. It takes a bit to get to those turret segments though, so let's talk about something I mentioned in an earlier video. I brought up a comparison to Star Fox 64 when I was doing the Clank segment, and someone in my comments pointed out that's not entirely fair. And I agree, comparing a minigame section in Size Matters to Star Fox 64 really is not fair. But the point I was trying to get across, and I didn't get it across very well, is that they should have had some sort of secondary mechanic in play if they were planning to make the enemy design so simple and require so little thought. I was thinking of Star Fox 64 as like a lock-on mechanics, for example. I feel like including a simple lock-on mechanic or some kind of homing shot, or, you know, anything that rewards the player for more strategic thinking would have been a good idea. Now on to other business. You can actually mix and match armor set parts to create special bonuses I wasn't aware of. I thought you needed all the parts in one specific matching armor set to get bonuses, like the Crystallix armor we're wearing some of right now. If we get all of the Crystallix armor, our wrench will shoot crystals. What I didn't know is that you can mix and match armor sets to get abilities. Like someone pointed out, you can use the Sledge Helmet with the Wildfire armor and get a special ability that way. That is an obscene amount of effort for a mechanic that you probably won't use on a casual run. So props to High Impact Games for that, because the armor system has way more depth than I realized. Anyway, this is one of those turret sections I was talking about. I actually find these to be quite good. They increase in difficulty as the level goes on. These little robot guys take 2 shots to go down. The first shot only freezes them. The second shot actually destroys them, which means that you have to multitask in a way that not a lot of other turret minigames require, because it's an ice turret and not just a shooty shoot turret. So yeah, there are robots coming from all directions toward Ratchet, and you need to be able to shoot them down, but you also need to keep track of which ones are frozen, which ones are unfrozen, and how many hits you've given a specific robot. It's a neat take on the overused turret minigame, and I like that you can't just spam the shots. The fact that the robots come from above and below adds another element to the multitasking as well. I understand why it would bother some people, because they probably didn't want to play a multitasking minigame in the middle of their third-person platformer shooter, but I quite like the design of these, and I think it adds some variety and character to the level. Now back to some other things that are still related to the game, but not necessarily related to what you're seeing on screen. I really love Size Matters as a subtitle, because, first of all, it's a portable game, so that's instantly a good reason to call it Size Matters. Oh well, hold on, this room right here is actually the room that gives me the most trouble in the level. And that's not really due to the room layout or anything like that, so much as it is there are always more enemies that come out than I expect. Just keep strafe jumping and you'll be fine, basically. It's what you do. Anyway, Size Matters works really well because it's a portable game. And it works well because it's a sexual pun, which is something that, that Ratchet & Clank is somewhat fond of. And it works well because size matters also means matters pertaining to size. You know, matters of size. Size matters. So it's definitely my favorite Ratchet & Clank title, by far. Not my favorite game, but as far as subtitles go, yeah, this is a pretty good one. So now the bigger robots get shields provided by the medic robots hanging around behind them, and we have to shoot the medic robots to disable the shields. All this really boils down to, though, is more strafe jumping. Yeah, you have to kill the medic robots first to disable the shields, but there's so many explosions and there's so much jumping going on, you're not even likely to notice until everything's dead. Like, I barely paid any attention to the shield mechanic while I was playing, and I still did fine. That's not to say the shield mechanic is unappreciated, because it does add more variety to the game mechanics and enemy types. It also shows the robots working together in a more coherent fashion than you normally see in this game. I wouldn't have noticed if the shield mechanic was missing. I often forget it's even a thing, but I still think it's good that it exists, if that makes sense. It's an indicator that they tried. They were trying to give variety to the enemy types and increase the challenge. And the game does have increasing challenge, just not because the enemies have shields now. It's time for another Clank turret section, and it ramps up in difficulty in a way you would probably expect. There are more robots coming from more directions. You need to switch planes more often between top and bottom. It's generally just more hectic. Now, I realize these turret segments aren't going to sell the game to anyone, but I think it shows High Impact Games' dedication to making this game feel like a well-rounded platform adventure. Like, these turret segments are unique to the medical outpost, and they're here because they can't really include any of the other mechanics that are normally used for variety. Like, they can't use the mimic plants here, and the swing shot until recently was taken away from Ratchet. And the main reason I remember the medical outpost is even a level is because this is the level with the Clank turret segments. Now, you could count Ratchet's Dream as part of the medical outpost level if you really wanted to, but I really don't think it counts. The game counts it as a separate level if you go back and replay them. A lot of things this game does reminds me of PlayStation 2 era platformers and how they were obsessed with creating variety, sometimes through minigames and sometimes through a constant stream of new mechanics. And I always got the impression that bothered a lot of people. You know, things like new minigames, vehicle segments, transformations, things like that. Anything to keep the variety going through the entire adventure. I always got the impression things like that kind of bothered people. Like, even when I bring up really classic platformers like, say, Sly Cooper, people bring up the turret shooting segments or the driving segments as something they quite dislike and they felt it broke the pacing of the game. But the thing is, I don't have any, like, intense opinions on that. Like, I think minigames are fine if they're done well. You just saw me praising the turret segment back there. As long as the minigames are well made and make the game feel like a well-rounded adventure, then I don't mind, because that's what they're for. But, like, what about you guys? Because I'm sure all of you, or maybe most of you, have played some PlayStation 2 era 3D platformers, because there were a lot of those. Were the vehicle segments and minigames and new mechanics, like, a point of frustration for you on the regular? Were you ambivalent towards them? Did you look forward to them? I think one PlayStation 2 platformer in particular got a lot of unnecessary flack for the inclusion of minigames and new mechanics. That would be Haven Call of the King, which I personally think is a creative masterpiece, and it deserved way more praise than it got. But that game introduces a new stream of mechanics non-stop. New vehicles, new... Like, there's a point where you're in a jetpack spraying out fires.
What is this place?
I believe it is a laboratory of some sort.
Nobody messes with me like this.
We must leave before it is too late.
Cool, we have collected the full set of Crystallix armor, which now means that our wrench will shoot crystals, which is actually more useful than it sounds. Now, shoot may be a little misleading. I don't mean it literally shoots crystals like projectiles, but if we ground slam, crystals will appear and deal a large amount of damage to enemies, which is incredibly helpful, especially if you're running out of ammunition. Don't pay any mind to the timer, by the way. Timer's pointless, just forget it's there. Unless you just fight really, really slowly, then you may have issues with the timer. Feels weird that there's a Clank turret segment while the timer is counting down, because these have a fixed amount of time to be completed. Anyway, what was I talking about before? Yeah, Haven, Call of the King. I was honestly shocked at how creative that game was from a visual standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, world-building standpoint, and a gameplay standpoint, even though that's the part most people get hung up on, is that there was maybe too much gameplay variety, a bit too much switching things up. But yeah, going back and playing it, it's clear Haven was meant to be a big one, if not the big one, for Traveler's Tales. And it's easy to see why. A lot of heart was put into that game, more so than I think most games. And I think most games have a lot of heart put into them. The level of dedication and care to creating a universe in that game, that was just heartwarming to me. I hope you're starting to see why I like this game. You know, it's a good 3D platformer. It's not a great shooter, but it's a good 3D platformer adventure game. It has decent variety. The levels look nice. The armor is a creative and fun mechanic, even if getting the armor through minigames is a little bit irritating. The minigames would be much less bothersome if they were more like the turret minigame. Like if they felt like natural extensions of the adventure as opposed to just something you have to do if you want better armor. Here's the final room in the level. It can be a doozy. There's a lot of stuff shooting at you at once. I died more than a few times in this room. The advice I can give you is don't try and be overly smart about it. There's no point to that. Just blast away until they go down. And remember that the enemies have shields. Wait for them to move out of the corners they're backed into before you fire at them. Unless you have ammo to spare, then just fire like mad. Unfortunately, we do not have ammo to spare, as we only have 2 guns currently. So what we're going to do is back up for a bit, and take a breather, and then we're going to go in there and kill everything with our new Crystallix-powered wrench. Because even though we have no more firepower, thanks to our Crystallix armor, we can totally wreck these guys just by doing ground slams next to them. This is one of few situations where the armor actually proves to be a lifesaver instead of just a really cool idea. Again, I do think the armor is a great idea conceptually, and obviously it's more fully realized than I initially thought, but it would be better if they gave you more armor quicker so you could do more experimenting with it on your first run.
This station is about to explode. We must leave now.
Here it is. Luna's last entry.
The tests are complete, Emperor Otto. I'm headed to the city with the package now.
Excellent. Are you sure the contents are perfect?
Quite sure. We created one subject, and it took 26 of our best warriors to destroy it. How are things coming on your project?
I planted the fake evidence. Quark's weak mind is so easy to manipulate.
I will contact you when the delivery is completed. Luna, out.
I have the coordinates.